Okay, and we are live now. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Dakota.
Good morning.
Good
Bonjour.
morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. So let's get started with introductions first. We have together two very special people. Kevin McDonald, he's a colleague of mine. He's actually has the same role as myself. Kev, why don't you introduce yourself? Because this is your first live with me. So go ahead.
I'm Kevin McDonald. I am a product consultant in Virtuosity for all things reality modeling. My background, I have a master's in geophysics and remote sensing, so fairly big nerd.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
Thanks.
Cool, thank you for that. So today is about a survey-centric approach to drone flights. So we have a very special guest, Dakota. Welcome and thank you so much for joining.
Good morning. Hey, everyone out there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. So Dakota and I became in touch a few weeks, I would say a few months, maybe a couple of months ago. He got, let me show this on the screen. He got in touch with our technical team and he provided really good feedback from his experience. And then I was like, hey, Dakota, why tell me more about this project and why don't we share this with the rest of the reality modeling community? And you were so kind and willing to actually share this. So that's why we're here today. We are doing a webinar on Thursday to cover the entire project, but today is about data acquisition because it's a very hot topic actually for our customers. I think it's a big struggle for most of them. You know, data quality, data acquisition, data best practices is there's a lot going on that end. So I thought it was a brilliant opportunity to have you here and learn from you guys and from yourself actually a bit more about iBot and the data acquisition and best practices.
Yeah, great. I really like how you framed that this is a survey-centric approach to drone flights because the quality of the mesh at the end, whether it will or the ortho or whichever product you'd like to get out of your drone flight, really hinges upon a great starting survey. So I'm happy to talk about that with you all today.
Cool. Do you want to first of all introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your background and maybe what you do at iBot?
Yeah, absolutely. So 4 years ago now, I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. I had a degree in environmental science, bachelor's. My first job out of college actually was as a land surveyor. I became a crew chief pretty quickly at a small land surveying company here in Pittsburgh. They've been in business for 100 years, actually. Got a great, solid foundation. My survey roots are strong. Quickly developed an interest on the CAD side of things, picked up an interest in drones, and put all three together. And a few short months ago, I joined the team at iBot as a geospatial analyst, and I haven't looked back since. iBot is really on the forefront of drone data acquisition as well as laser scan acquisition now. We are really in the digital twin industry, I would say now.
Yeah, we've been working together for a long time. I'll say iBot and Bentley. Tell us a bit more about your job, actually, what you do as your spatial analyst at iBot. What's your day-to-day life like?
So everyone at iBot has 10 hats that they put on it at different times. I'm no exception. It really helps when every part of the machine is all well oiled and spinning in unison. So there are days I'm out in the field collecting great survey and drone data. There are days where I'm collaborating with the back office on post-processing techniques, and there are days where I'm extracting great reality meshes and putting planimetrics and contours on top of them. And this is actually the first time I've got to put on my business development hat. So it's an exciting new hat to try out.
That's great. That's fascinating. So let's dig a little bit more into the projects, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So this specific project was a survey of a failed embankment on a hillside. Um, the conventional survey method really was not appropriate for this because of our clients' adherence to safety standards, our own adherence to safety standards, and the turnaround time and level of detail and area of interest that we needed to capture with this specific site. IBOT was able to mobilize in 24 hours, including um, planning a great ground control network, um, uh, getting a great survey out there. We ran a base rover configuration for this part, which is you'll see here on the picture that's on the left of my screen. That is the rover portion of our base rover. We use 2 Trimble R10 head units. One set up on a very well-known base, one set up on ground control that we utilized. It's also a picture of the ground control we use. And the great benefit of the base rover configuration is that the R10 head unit starts as the rover and turns off, and our drone comes on and replaces that rover configuration as well. So it's great to have the I'm sure a lot of people out there are using the PPK in unison with a base rover configuration. So it helps really tighten down those camera positions and the position of the drone while it's flying, as well as provides us with sub-centimeter accuracy on our ground control when we go to take it into the office and post-process it.
Are you getting more requests like this? You know, let's say during COVID, post-COVID, people want more, like less boots on ground, so they want, you know, less obstructions on site. Are you finding like these are more frequent requests now?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we do has really evolved to doing all of our planimetrics from a drone capture with very little boots on the ground work. You know, a drone can't set property corners yet, so there's a lot of boundary surveys that we're still mobilizing for and using conventional survey methods. But I would argue that this is another conventional survey method now in drone photogrammetry and data acquisition that really collapses time in the field and helps for a safer survey in this point too. One, you don't have as many people in operation on the site in a COVID environment, and you also don't have them trekking down a dangerous slope as well. So it's kind of a safety on 2 fronts here.
Yeah, it's massive.
So we were able to mobilize, like I said, again, in under 24 hours for this site, able to capture not only the failed embankment of the area, but also the detail in the surrounding area to provide our client with a pretty good game plan to access this failed embankment as well. Because as you can see on the left here, there's piping and footers. There's a brand new building that was built here as well. So we're able to extract a lot of extra data out of our reality meshes that you wouldn't necessarily, you would have to go back into the field with a conventional survey method to capture should the client request additional data.
Can I ask, like, if you know at all, how long has it taken you to perfect this method of capture? Like, you know, how many tests did you have to go through? Do you have certain accuracies? Right, we can guarantee this accuracy. We're pretty confident that. Like, how did all this come about?
Well, I'll be the first to say that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, we all are. We're taking learned data, whether it's probing Virtuosity for help on the back end with extracting it, or consulting with the professional land surveyor we have on staff here, Todd Henwood. It's taken a long time to perfect. Our flight patterns change depending on the area of interest and level of detail. It really goes back to those two things. The survey side of things, Todd Henwood brought a ton of that experience with him to IBOT, and we were really able to lean on his years of experience with this. But as far as drone photogrammetry goes, IBOT is developing and learning and adapting every day. I think the special approach that we take now is really a 5 years in the making approach, where, you know, we started pushing a button on a flight automation app and controlling our front and side overlap and and letting that go. And then you see the results, and it's like, I've got to do a little bit more here to pull the data that I want out of this. We're constantly evolving. We're even in real time on these projects. We are evolving. Thankfully, none of the collection or processing evolutions took place on this failed slope embankment. It was really the innovation that Virtuosity was able to provide was the only pivot we really made with ground extraction and grabbing great contours out of this mesh as well.
That's pretty good. I guess that's the difference between a drone pilot and a drone surveyor. That a vast amount of experience and adaptability. You can just hit any site and you have a plan, you have experience how to tackle it, whereas the average kind of pilot will be, what do I do? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic, because we see more and more drone operators that are providing services in the survey and mapping. So I think both the drone manufacturers and the software providers are trying to also open up to different people don't need to have a photogrammetry background to use context capture, for example, or at least we try to help them into understanding the software without the need for that background. But there is always of course, if you have the background for things go way much easier. So someone actually in a recent a few weeks ago, we had a customer here in one of our lives, and he was actually highlighting that now if you have a drone, you can do surveying. And he was criticizing that that's not the case. Obviously, you need that experience. So it's an interesting conversation to how do you address that for someone that doesn't have the background.
I think the comment was, it's like a photographer trying to be a surveyor.
Yeah,
I think that's what his comment was.
If you are using a drone to do surveying, I would implore you to have a surveyor nearby. If you've got that eye, if you've got that processing background and stuff, great, you're halfway there. Link up with a surveyor and understand what you need to get out of the field before you can claim to know anything. If you utilize a drone to take great pictures of a building or this container behind me, that's one thing. But you use a drone to take pictures and build a model and say this container is 400 foot above ground level on this coordinate system. Now you're in trouble unless you really know that that's where it's at. When we go, excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
When we go onto the field to collect stuff, the base rover configuration is so important because we can reliably bank on photogrammetry, kind of giving a 1.5 times multiplier to the error that we have in the field. We run base rover because we need our ground control, our check shots, and our PPK to be running in such that we don't introduce more than a 1/10 of a US survey foot of error, because if I multiply that by 1.5, now I'm at 1/4 of a foot, and I'm out of my 1 foot survey contour tolerance to deliver a map to someone. So what we're going to showcase on Thursday would not have happened without a very rigid survey control network.
And that's I guess where also the biggest struggle with data acquisition comes from, that we the technology is opening up to people with different backgrounds, and those backgrounds don't ensure that the process is going to be seamless, because you don't have the expertise and the the skills to actually understand what you are just saying. Is just, if you are not a surveyor, well, how do you actually even know about these networks and accuracies and all that. So it's interesting that take on this.
I would urge that collaboration. It's I think surveyors are soon and already are learning that this is another tool in the tool belt. Just as the GPS unit I'm utilizing today is a tool in the tool belt. Some time ago, the introduction of CAD was a tool in the tool belt, and there were computer engineers that knew how to do CAD a lot quicker than surveyors did. But the evolution and adoption of these utilities really is a survey-centric necessity. So we're getting there. If you're that drone pilot and you need to brush up on some of these survey approaches, I would really recommend the collaboration and collaboration will lead to adoption.
Yeah, that's actually, I think you put it brilliantly, and I really like this. We've seen actually a
Collaboration.
few collaborators in Europe that they are very successful now. They maybe started as, you know, drone inspection or even photography, and because of a collaboration with a surveying or a geomatics company, they are now actually driving those operations in a much more effective, and obviously they can target different industries with that experience and that expertise.
Yeah, certainly.
So I wanted to ask Dakota a bit more about the drone flights and the drone missions. Like, how do you guys plan these? Like, for this specific project, maybe might be a good example to start talking about for in the preparation for the webinar on Thursday, which, by the way, everyone that is live can scan the QR code, and that will take you to the registration page. So don't forget to do that before Thursday. So maybe, yeah, the drone flight and the drone mission, if you can maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Right. So it really begins before we're even out there with the collaboration between our field survey and data processing teams. We usually have Google Earth handy. We're surveying the area in our own office, getting a great idea of the landscape that's out there, the control network that we're going to be setting, and potential landing zones and takeoff zones as well. When we get out into the field, again, we kind of reproduce that. It's know where my ground control is, know where my hazards are in the field, where I can land and where I can take off. And then from there, you know, we utilize an array of tools and technologies for this. It really depends, again, on the area of interest and level of detail that you need out of your mission. A lot of times a Phantom 4 with that 20 megapixel global shutter is going to get you exactly what you need. If you want to draw planimetrics on half a foot curb all day long, you're going to need something a little bit more robust. So, you know, automated flight operations are great for producing orthos, but here at iBot, we really like to take manual flights, especially with our M600 frame. Just flying and capturing every single aspect of this site. You know, you kind of get the feel for things as you're flying. That, you know, I'm 70% overlap between this picture and the next picture. Let me circle back and perform a lower grid. We've really moved away from the flight automated, click a button and watch it go sort of approach to things, especially when we're trying to make reality models, because we need that depth in our model, and we need the accuracy and the overlap from kind of a manual touch on things.
It's really interesting, because I've heard this from companies that are doing inspections, especially inspections on infrastructure, but not mapping and surveying. So it's interesting that you guys have moved away from that, you know, automated flight planning. Sorry, Dakota, before we continue on that, I have a couple of questions coming from LinkedIn. So I have, do you guys work with RTK or post-processing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for reminding me to touch on that. So we had a known control network in this specific instance. It's a site that we frequent a lot. So the control network out there is robust. When we run VRS or RTK, it's usually for a new area with a little bit more lax ground control standards. Because we can anticipate an RTK to introduce, you know, that 10th in the vertical is kind of already there. When we run base rover, we have the benefit of being able to post-process our data against an Opus solution, or in Trimble Business Center, we post-process it against, I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it takes into consideration the British and Chinese-based satellite control network as well. And that's able to, after the fact, retweak our base station and refine where those rover points were as well. We utilize both, though.
Okay. Good to know. And I have another question coming in. Please discuss the capabilities to incorporate test boring data into a drone survey model. Is there a good interface that you recommend? By the way, hello, Dakota. Someone that knows you.
Hello. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is a geology friend. Good morning. I would need to... hey, Lance. I would need to collaborate with a geologist, just like I would not be void of survey knowledge and speaking on behalf of a surveyor. I don't want to be void of a strong geotechnical background and speaking on behalf of a geologist. MicroStation is a great tool to introduce a number of mapping datas. And so long as our rigid control network is set just like we do every time, I can bring a reality mesh into MicroStation and I can turn on a bore sample CAD drawing as well, and they would be reflected right there. And I'm happy to do that should you ever need that, Lance.
When you're talking about like how you go to manual flights and everything like that, that goes back to what we were speaking about from pure experience and adaptability. Like, you don't have, right, we're going to approach this site with oblique grids purely, or we're going to go overlapping orbits, or you're constantly changing it up. So it keeps going back to this whole building massive amount of experience, and how there's not one defined approach for everything.
So we find that difficult here, and we try to write workflows for ourselves. And how can we plan and go out in the field and have reproducible approaches? How can we scale? And I think it was Mike Tyson who said everyone's got a plan until you punch them in the face. And with a lot of planning and preparation, 50% of the time it doesn't go the way that you wanted in the field, and it requires an adaptation from what you wanted to do out in the field. And I was not here for this discovery, but I've been told that the manual approach that we have at iBot kind of came out of frustration and repetition of a failed automation not producing the results that we wanted. And our owner and one of our head pilots just went out and scanned and captured the absolute heck out of the city that our office is in, and just took way too many pictures. And that's what it takes sometimes. You get 1,100 pictures of a building, and it's going to be a pretty good building. And obviously you can scale it back from there, but these innovations really came from a necessity.
What a hero. So you must like something like a digital twin or an iTwin must be a godsend, because if you're going to do continuous surveying, at least you have that in the bag, what you're meant to do, and you can just constantly reproduce it. So that must be nice if you get one of those projects.
Absolutely. Our post-processing side of things, I collaborate with a great guy, Chris Dawley. Our context capture knowledge, we put our heads together all the time, and we really get great results from that software. And we utilize a couple other softwares too, depending on what we need to use. There's really not one solution when you do so many different things capture-wise. But in terms of reality modeling and these digital twins, they're so great because, if our client were to call up and say, I need to know the size of the footers that were out there, and I need to know this building height and that pipe volume or width, we may not have gone out to that site that day to capture those specific qualities of what's out there, but we have that data because we captured the entire site and made a digital twin of it. So while, what we show you on Thursday may not reflect pipe diameters and concrete footer placements, we have that there, and should your client ever need that data, it's easily extractable. You just refer back to that digital twin.
That's A+ answer.
Just to make a comment, we have someone asking for the workflow of data capture by drones to beam modeling and digital twin. I just wanted to say again that we have the webinar on Thursday in which we will cover, Dakota will actually present in great level of detail the projects that he did, and he will explain that data processing part, and then we can talk more about the beam and the CAD and the digital twin after applications. But if you want to mention something, Dakota, replying to that person.
Yeah, that workflow involves pulling up your sleeves and getting a little dirty sometimes. It's a lot of data to wade through. Once you have that digital twin, and we can talk in more detail on Thursday, but MicroStation is the best thing to chew on that data. And if you want to extract planometrics from it, it involves you zooming way into your mesh and laying line work like a survey crew would. You just have the benefit of not being directly out in the field when you lay this line work. It takes just as much rigid adherence to detail, except I have a computer screen in front of me instead of a rod in my hand, which if I zoom to the left here, the survey equipment is right back there. It never leaves the office. So
thank you. Actually, I wanted to make a point and I forgot about it. Sorry, I was replying to the comments. I can't do two things at the same time.
Oh no.
Maybe we'll come back. Oh, damn it. Okay, so any other, I think, Kev, you mentioned something before we went live about the biggest, what was it, the biggest mistake
project,
or the biggest...
or mistakes. Yeah, sorry, yeah, like what you know, you don't have to mention it, but what are some of the mistakes you've made and like how have you learned from them?
Yeah, maybe the big challenge that you had in from like when you talk about a fail embankment. My background is in surveying as well, but I actually didn't do much of work as surveyor because I didn't like it much. But like the words of a failed embankment sounds kind of like like a harsh environment and something challenging. So from a data acquisition point of view, I will expect that you have a few challenges both in field and in the office. So maybe we can start from there.
Yeah. So one of the biggest hurdles, I guess we'll call it, that we had to overcome at one point, it was very recently. We mobilized and went halfway across the country to collect a reality model of a very large facility. And when we came back to the office, we realized that 60% of the EXIF data was just not there. We had no camera positions on our data. And when you have a custom M600 frame and it's all, very precisely put together, you don't bank on that failing sometimes, but 1 in every 100 it does. And this just so happened to happen when we were, I think, 2,200 miles away from our office. So there, you don't go back. You can't go back and redo the entire thing. You had one go at it. So it, now we check EXIF data before we leave the site. But we really had to. I spooled up a trial of Agisoft, and we wiped all the EXIF data on the cameras and crossed our fingers and really went at this piece for quite some time to get the best possible data that we had out. And it looked brilliant at the end. It just took. It was quite the unexpected hurdle. That was a big one for the back office team there. And that happens, and it's there are tools that are available to generate quick orthos, I think they call it, on some of your flight automation softwares. You can check every box you possibly can, but then you bank on a hardware failure that isn't supposed to fail. So do some processing in the field before you go home, especially if it's 2,200 miles away.
Yeah, we are. I think we've done a few live chats where we have suggested to use the area triangulation ink on this capture as kind of like a quick quality check in the field. We know a few customers that are using it, especially in the drone inspection for the drone inspection applications. Have you used that, Dakota? And do you have any experience on that?
I don't directly have experience with that process. Our chief pilot definitely would, and if he hasn't, he would like to know about that. So I will probe you more for some of that. Going back to the manual means in which we capture most of the stuff, it would definitely help to have a non-manual way of verifying that data in the field before you leave. So I definitely want to learn more of that because I don't think I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, it's the auto triangulation result has kind of like a nice 3D viewer. I think, Kevin, you're more familiar than me, so
with the
maybe you.
splats.
Yeah, the splats.
Yeah, instead of like a colored point cloud, it actually kind of joins them together and gives you like an initial preview. So it's good for sanity checking a lot of stuff. And I actually, that's touching on a lot of people going for cloud solutions as well. So they're looking to get some type of processing or sanity check done while they're on site. So, and that leads further into the digital twin and all that.
Yeah, and it allows you to measure and kind of like check the overlap. The overlap is it might be also a big of a struggle when you are when you need to model the elevated objects on the field, on the project. Sorry, so that's kind of like you can check the quality also on the overlap and coverage of your data before leaving the field, so you don't need to go back. So yeah, I think it's a good. Someone was saying that reality capture can pre-stitch your photos in the field to check your data. Is basically that. So it allows you to do basically the same thing with a bit more of advanced tools like the measurement, overlap, and things like that.
That's a great tool to have, and I know. Pre-iBot, I was using WebODM, which is kind of the open source 3D modeling tool, and it had kind of a fast ortho method, for all the go-getters out there that don't have a huge bank account to go out and capture stuff. The open source software approach I used for years too, and it's got some of that in there as well, where you can just check and measure a few things before you leave, just to ensure you don't drive all the way home and have bad data.
Yeah. So any other challenges from the data acquisition other than the EXIF data? that was a pretty critical one.
Weather always poses a challenge. It could, flying in it and having it mess up your camera and your global shutter or not your global shutter, depending on your sensor type. You can plan for it, but gusting wind is gusting wind, especially 200 feet up in the air. And that's one thing that you can plan and not plan for, because weather is chaos theory, and who knows what's going to happen at any given time. That's always a challenge. I would have a stand down rate built into for your client. So if you have to sit in your truck for an hour while the gusting wind passes, do that, because it's and sometimes you need to go home and come back the next day. These are all built-in things, but we can't control the weather. So that's always a challenge. Not for this specific one. I think if you look up, we had nice, beautiful, clear skies and a big sun for this capture. A lot of our challenges really came with making a new workflow, and Thursday I really love to touch on that, because we were using a multitude of software to go back and forth, and it was not the best practice for sure. So one of our biggest challenges with this site was just keeping it in one environment and getting everything that we needed out of it. So Virtuosity really came in, and Slawomir really helped me out to save the day. So I will sing his praises on Thursday.
Yeah, he's going to be delighted to hear this. Actually, touching on that topic, Dakota, on the workflow, we have a comment here asking, can you talk a bit more about the accuracy you generally aiming for in terms of ground distance? Because I think that's the link between the data acquisition and the data processing, when you really start thinking about the accuracy deliverables that you need for your final data. So how do you,
So again, depending on the area of interest, if it's gigantic and the level of detail is super precise, we're hoping to get around a centimeter per pixel, and with a rigid, robust survey, we can really georeference it in whichever processing software we want to use. If you're looking at your target and 1 pixel takes up 2/3 of the board, are you really getting a nice, robust reference system there, I would argue that no, you're not, and you may be introducing several. Those are 1 foot by 1 foot survey targets that we have. So you would be introducing several inches of uncertainty, we'll call it for now, into your model before it's even processed. And then, going back to the 1.5 times photogrammetry multiplication that you can expect from a nice survey network to the final mesh product, and maybe a couple inches is all you need. There's times where we take a Phantom 4 or a Mavic out, and we're seeing 2 to 3 centimeters ground survey GSD, and that's great. That's exactly what our client requires. We're making a cool ortho of a building, or a nice mesh that doesn't need 1 foot contouring accuracy on across the site. So I just know your client. Know that your client may not know what they want every time. There's tons of industries that deal with this every day. It's a nice education piece, but to be able to educate your client, you really need to know these numbers going into this process. If I take a Mavic 2 out to a site and guarantee 1 foot contouring accuracy over a 40-acre site to my client, I'm lying to myself and him, because my ground control network won't ever be able to produce that, essentially. But I'm going to get beautiful spiracles and panos and orthos with the tool that I chose for this. That's why we utilize a M600 frame with a powerful camera attached to it, because a lot of times we need that 1 centimeter ground survey distance to give our clients, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I think it comes down to everything that you are talking about. I think it's just planning. And a lot of the times there is, even the when there is an over acquisition doing the data, like you want to gather more data just to make sure that you're going to have enough overlap or enough accuracy, and then you end up with this massive amount of data that is completely unnecessary to achieve the final accuracy for the purpose that you are trying to achieve. So knowing the customer is definitely, I think that's a really strong point, knowing what they want, knowing what you are trying to deliver, and then start the planning from there. Is kind of like reverse engineering or planning or whatever you call it. Would you agree on that? Would you just take from the requirement, from the customer requirement, do you build up your planning on that, or what's the starting point for you?
Yeah, that starting point is the agreement that you have with the client at the end of this. If they need an OBJ, then you better know how to deliver a very accurate OBJ of the site. If they need a GeoTIFF, you need to know how to export your photos in such a way that you've got a nice, robust GeoTIFF. It really goes customer satisfaction and their needs kind of start sometimes with education, like we just discussed. But from our planning side, we run with exactly what's on that piece of paper. And if I promised 1 foot contours, I need to start planning with the assumption that I'm going to be able to build a 1 foot contouring accuracy for my client. And like I said, a lot of times that's not the case. If they want a nice ortho photo of their park, or they want to showcase panoramas of their building, or they want a cool 3D model, but they don't really need it to be geo-referenced in space. These are all things to know, because you're wasting time and money if you go out and lay this gigantic survey control network and then deliver it in WGS84 for your client. It's unnecessary. It's an extra step that you didn't need to take. I will say, in terms of extra steps, if you come back to the office with too much data, congrats. Let that be a problem, because you can always lower the quality of your cameras. You can throw some pictures out. Always over collect, and have an extra hard drive in your desk, because that's going to happen. You're going to need to over collect sometimes.
That's the lesson for today. It sounds like when we used to get into the arguments about, well, not arguments, but discussions between, relative accuracy versus absolute accuracy, and that used to just get messy with people.
We could have an entire webinar on
after
that
the
question.
next one.
Actually, I was just being mindful of the time because I normally don't go over 30 minutes on a live chat, but we still have 35 people live, and we've been for 40 minutes. Dakota, do you wanna share just a sneak peek of the projects?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's see if I can share my screen correctly here with you all.
Yeah, let me.
Screen 1. I'm going to move my chat away. So what you're seeing here, your sneak peek, is the traditional engineering deliverable that we got out of this reality mesh. This is, since the invention of CAD, this is what the engineering team needs to see with a failed embankment. And I think I have my brake lines off here, but I like to turn them on just to accentuate the slope. So here, there were two really big areas. This one surpassed vertical. This slip here, this failing in this embankment, went beyond vertical, and with our capturing process, we're able to represent that very, very, it's a reality mesh. It's true to reality. It's true to exactly what's out there. So these are the money shots. These are really what the engineers need to see. And I'll flip on the end product too, since the troopers are still here in the chat. This is what we extracted our data from. You've seen this rotating model a couple times over the few weeks. I've bombarded you with it, I'm sure.
We all.
Yeah. But the benefit of a reality model is, if you can see right here, this slope is beyond vertical. This is, your contours can't reflect a beyond vertical slope, but your reality mesh can. And now the engineer out there knows that this is a very severe problem in terms of remedying it. Because if you stand right here with your survey rod, you're going to break off this whole piece of embankment and you're going to fall in this water. And that's why we couldn't get out there with the two-man crew for this particular case. But the methods that we used laid these contours on perfectly, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys on Thursday.
And I can't wait to see that on Thursday. Dakota, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, Kevin. It was lovely to have you. I think you had a much more, I don't know how to say this.
Multicultural?
I was going to go for nerdiness, if that's even a word. Thank you both so much for joining today. It's been great. We'll be the three of us presenting on Thursday, so can't wait for that. Register. Don't forget you need to register before Thursday, and see you all there, and take care.
Please add me. We'll discuss more. I'd love to nerd out with all of you over these topics. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye. Bye.